All right. I'm going to go ahead and get this started now. Uh, Greetings, YouTube. This is the Garage Autonomist, and it is the Autonomous Lounge Thursday night, talking shit Thursday. Anyway, as I think about the world events, that stupid nagging voice in the back of my head says, what about poverty in the hood? What about gentrification? School to prison pipeline? Then I remind myself that my politics and ideology won't allow me to have tunnel vision simply because I can't afford to do that. If you suddenly have the black community squared away and shitting Tiffany cufflinks, we would be surrounded still by an eroding earth and air that is unbreathable. If all the black women became the well behaved, doll eyed broodmares that are shining black princes who are suddenly now all captains of fleets of black industries coming home at 7 p.m. to lead their families in prayer over low carb, porkless meals, we would still have capitalism feeding off of day laborers and immigrants of all nationalities. And on the global scale, our Mexican, Haitian, Jamaican, and Asian neighbors will be eaten by imperialism. And when imperialism sees that it's empty, that its plate is empty, it will look at our Afro Shire, forgetting whatever sovereignty treaties we would have signed for our so called black nation, and burping afterwards. The ruling class will reminisce wistfully of old treaties that with the Native Americans. So that hood boy deep down needs to be reminded that the world is a big fucking place and most importantly, interconnected. That fact is not coming from sophomoric morals or sentiment, but from a social scientific fact. So I've been restless in the past 3 months as I see my oldest getting deeper into social movements and learning about the world around her. I'm starting to take a harsher look at myself, asking when I'm going to get involved in something in the real world again. I recently read co founder and co director of Corporation Jackson, a community organizing nonprofit uh, by Kali Akuno. His article was Until We Win Black Labor and Liberation in the Disposable Era. The link is in the low bar. The article is basically a call to action and looking at alternative forms of community organizing and restructuring in the form of what Akuno proposes as Black autonomous zones. Now, y'all may have remembered from my mini series, The Personal is the Political, I talk about Black autonomy and what autonomism is in the first place. Now, I want to quote a little bit from the article. Again, this is Until We Win by Kali Akuno. Self-determination and social liberation. How do we get there? Take care of our own material needs: food, water, shelter, clothing, healthcare, defense, jobs, etc. How will we address the social contradictions that shape and define us both internally and externally? How should we how should we and will we express our political independence? There are no easy and cookie cutter answers. However, there are some general principles and dynamics that I believe are perfectly clear. Given how we have been structurally positioned as a disposable surplus population by the US empire, we need to build a mass movement that focuses as much on organizing and building autonomous, self organized, and executed social projects as it focuses on campaigns and initiatives that apply transformative pressure on the government and the forces of economic exploitation and domination. This is imperative, especially when we clearly understand the imperatives of the system we are fighting against. The capitalism system has always required certain levels of worker, quote unquote, reserves, the army of the unemployed. I spoke about that a little bit in the Lumpen Proletariats video. Okay, going back to quoting Colley. In order to control labor costs and maintain social control. But the system must now do two things simultaneously to maintain profits: drastically reduce the cost of all labor and ruthlessly discard millions of jobs. You are on your own, quote unquote, is the only social rationale the system has the capacity to process, and its overlords insist that there are no alternatives, quote unquote, to the program of pain that they have to implement and administer. For Black people can either accept their fate as a disposable population or go to hell. We have to therefore create our own options and do everything we can to eliminate the systemic threat that confronts us. I'm almost done. These types of projects range from organizing community farms focused on developing the capacity to feed thousands of people to forming people's self-defense networks to organizing non-market housing projects to building cooperatives to fulfill our material needs. What the combination of these efforts will amount to is the creation of Black autonomous zones. These autonomous zones must serve as centers for collective survival, collective defense, collective self sufficiency, and social solidarity. However, we have to be clear that while building Black autonomous zones is necessary, they are not sufficient in and of themselves. In addition to advancing our own autonomous development and political independence, we have to build a revolutionary international movement. We are not going to transform the world on our own. As noted throughout this short work, Black people in the US are not the only people confronting massive displacement, dislocation, and disposability and genocide. Various peoples and sectors of the working class throughout the US and the world confronting these existential challenges and seeking concrete solutions and real allies as much as we do. Finally, I'm ending it. That's the end of the quote. So, as I look at all these young people in France still breaking barriers, fighting the police, all in solidarity of workers who stand to lose rights and privileges that we in America have already lost almost 75, maybe even 100 years ago, I'm thinking about Colley's proposal. There are more details that he lays out in the article, and I can see us building these autonomous zones and at the same time linking them up with others who are not us, but fighting for freedom as well. I can see me going about this work real soon. It's just a matter of, I guess, me standing up and reaching out in my own block to start. And now for the personal news. I've decided to start back at school. Now, I realized after listening to my video about Raven Williams, also known as Raven Masterson, that in the segment of the video, I left out that I did go back to college when I was around 34. It was my first time ever attending. I was able to start around that time because I was a former AmeriCorps member in the technology program. That program, I was building technology projects in communities of need. That's just a short answer for what I was doing. And when you have served a year of service in AmeriCorps, you get what's called an education award that you can apply to tuition of your college of choice. So I started something that I should have done in my 20s when I was flipping steaks during the weekends and fighting the power during the week. Looking back, I have two regrets: that I did not go to college after I got my GED, and at a time when I had no children or a spouse, and I regret quitting school just a mere 6 years ago. And I liked it, but for the reason I should have gone in the first place, as I mentioned, I had no kids at the time. But I quit for that very reason. I had kids, I had a full time job, blah, blah, blah. You know the deal. I mean, if you've been in that situation, you feel like you got to quit one thing or the other, and that other thing you can't quit. Let me check to see if anybody's even friggin' listening to me. Okay, there are three watching me now. Hi, everybody, the three or the four. Uh, if you're able to hear me, at least tell me in the chat room. My earphones, I think I might have to buy some new ones. Typically I have to uh, mute the play window. But anyway, let me go ahead and finish. So I was talking about when I was gonna start back school. But like I think I mentioned a while back, my youngest daughter's former nanny go into a doctorate program, and we hosted her graduation party here at the house about 2 weeks ago. Now I looked at. I'm sorry, my screen is slowing up on me. Now, anyway, but going back to our nanny, the thing is that I'm looking at her, and while she doesn't have children at this time, she works two part-time jobs, one at the college that Mrs. Autonomist used to work at. That's how she got the job. And she still works part-time as a nanny or a caregiver, babysitter, however you want to call it. And all the while putting herself through a master's program, she was still able to travel and go to places like her native Mexico, Czechoslovakia, and just recently she came back from Cuba, where she bought back for me a cigar. Thank you very much. And so supposedly the kind of chase smoke, she says. And she got us a couple of bottles of rum. And to top it all off, she still makes less than I do. So while she's giving a thank you speech, I hear that nagging voice in the back of my head, and it goes, "Hey, asshole, what's your fucking excuse?" Now I ignore the voice, and again it asks, "What's your excuse? Why not go back to school?" I mean, fuck it, right? I mean, at this point, there really isn't an excuse. All right. I did love being in the classroom and I loved writing papers. It really was like going to the gym for my brain. See, my younger, stubborn, arrogant self was so prideful of being working class and that I ignorantly saw higher education as a ruling class thing. I can laugh at that shit now, but it really was stupid. I mean, I was fearful of being spoon fed ideas instead of coming to those ideas on my own. But later, when I started college, already at that time, I was a father of a toddler. I had no idea that college is what you make of it. But like I said, when I was going, I got contentious and at the same time negative and restless. And I felt like I would never be able to get to the parts that I really wanted to get to. And because of the limited time that I was able to go to school, it just seemed like it was never going to happen. It was never going to end. And that juggling pickups after school with kids and shit like that, that both my wife and I were both doing, I just didn't stick it out. And I really should have. And had I have stuck it out, it would have been me giving that speech 2 weeks ago. Now, I really don't have any excuse. I have a 16-year-old who basically uses our residence to come here to eat and sleep. And then when she's not here, she's at school or she's at art galleries or she's going to protests. And then I got my 10-year-old who's going to be 11 in 3 weeks. So fuck it. I have no excuse, especially now that I'm looking at a full online program that the school that I attended now offer. And now there's not a if, I'm going to do it. When I start this program, I'll at least be able to finish the bachelor's part, and then I can move on to what I want to do academically. So all I can say is wish me luck. Now I'm going to go ahead and have a look at the chat room, and I'm going to open it up to any subject. I see Curious is here. Thank you, Curious. Well, All right, whatever. You're here now.
Yes, I know. I'm sorry about that though.
No,
You
don't be
know
sorry.
what? I wanted to say congratulations on school, and I wanted to ask, what makes you want to go?
I feel like there's two things happening. One, I feel intellectually, I guess, stagnant. It's like when you've been to the, when you've been, on a good roll for about a good 2 or 3 years, going to the gym and getting yourself fit and everything's going good, and then you suddenly feel like, oh, I don't think I have enough time to go anymore, and so you start to get you start to gain weight again. You start to feel like not whatever. It's starting to feel that way, and it's the same thing happening with me right now in terms of activism. I think I'm burnt out on just showing up at actions. Obviously, that's been happening for the last almost 20 something years, but I think that now it's just, I don't know, maybe the older you get, the bolder you get, they say. So now I just feel like building, like actually building. I think I did all the following and being the gopher boy and being the the whatever, like, I did all that. That was what I was doing back in the day. But
Mhm.
I've now feel like now building and not necessarily leading, but just yeah, but wanting to work with people, and I'm just kind of over that, like waiting for something to happen in order to make
Mhm.
change.
I know what you mean.
Because shit is happening anyway. I mean, things are gonna. I mean, obviously, the brutality is not gonna stop. The None of that stuff is gonna stop, and people are working, like they're working, but it's more like reacting. And I just want
Mhm.
to start doing real community building. And yeah, so well, I read the Kali Akuno piece. Oh man, maybe 8 months ago, way
Mhm.
before I even started this channel. But I mean, I thought it was really good. And I was like, oh, this sounds like so great, but whatever. But now I'm actually going like, this sounds like something like I can actually try to get going in my area. I mean, I have resources, I have space. I can get people to come here and sit, and we can have meetings and talk. Like I
Mhm.
could do that. So I just it's that and school. It's like these two things are now like on my mind to want to do.
So you can't do it separately. You can do it separately without school, though. So you're saying intellectually stagnant, but it's just weird to me because when I think of the people that I know who have gone to school, they're not as in touch as you are. So I thought at first that you were wanting to go for social reasons to be able to connect with other people, um, other like-minded people, and gather. But then you're saying no, not so much. And when I see people who when I the people that I know who have gone to school, I can't say that they're.
Hello.
I'm really shocked by that.
Oh, well, I mean, I can explain it. I know I know what you're saying, but I think that the
Mm-hmm.
people that who are in school are younger.
No,
I,
graduated people. I'm talking about people
oh,
who are in their
yeah. Well,
that
hey,
I've
you were
spoken
breaking.
to about a hello. No, because you're saying younger people that I know. No, can you hear me?
Hold on. Yeah, you were breaking up there for a while.
Yes, calling in from a cell phone probably not ideal. But I
Oh,
mean, among I don't because we know that there are people that are bright and whatnot. I guess well read is what I mean. You're bright, but
mhm.
you're also well read. So I'm surprised that you would even want to become more well read. I mean, how much more can you know?
Well, that's the thing. See the all right. Let me go back. Let me. There's two things. I think I would say that a huge amount of what makes me seem or look smart or whatever is really my life experience. So I feel like really I draw a lot from that. And yes, another huge chunk is based on things that I've read and basically taught myself and learned on my own. But it's to me what one of the things that I remember that like I touched on earlier about when I did start back at school around uh now it's almost like 10 years. But one of the things I've noticed, and that's reason why I realized how wrong I was when I was younger, is that it's not so much about just sitting there and reading. It really was like some of the professors that I've had were very challenging in
Hmm.
terms of thought. And I think that and I think sometimes professors become bad teachers because they have so many bad students, and it becomes such I've noticed this. It becomes such a cycle of, look, these kids just want to sit and passively learn, so I might as well just passively teach. But
Yeah.
when I was in the classroom, I asked questions. I was able to take concepts that I was learning and actually applying them, and even saw where they applied in real life and said, "Oh, hey!" And in my interactions with the professors and teachers, they would certainly start to get animated, and start to, like that was happening. So because there was an exchange of ideas happening in the class, rather than I'm here to listen to you lecture, I'm
Hmm.
here to take notes. I'm here to take a test. I'm here to regurgitate on the test and pass. Like instead of me doing that, I remember how good it felt exercising basically my brain as we as I was having conversations with the professors. And so that to me was very important, and that kind of stuck with me. It stuck in my brain for a huge amount of time. Like when I was going to school, I was like, oh, so this is what I was an asshole and didn't think was going on in college. I mean, yes, it's true. Mainly what I thought was going on was this sort of thing where people were passively learning and the professors were passively teaching, or just being so full of themselves that they felt like all they had to do was indoctrinate.
Hmm.
But and don't get me wrong, I think that that still happens, especially with professors who are like these sort of celebrity professors. Like I shouldn't say celebrities, but I mean like they're superstars, on the campus type of thing. Those
Yeah.
types of people just will go on and on and on and on and on and move, run their
Yeah.
mouths and think that you're just there to listen, and and we're all there to grovel at your feet for pearls of wisdom. Like I know that that sort
They
of
have the
people,
truth.
right? But I do know one thing: they do not like it. And I think older students present either a good thing or a bad thing for most professors. I think when you're an older student and like you've been around and you do ask more questions, or you do sort of throw out some challenging questions, they either will like you, like I mentioned before, or they will hate you and find you very annoying, which is what happened between me and a psych professor. She was annoying. She really was fucked up. This woman basically would just talk about her son. She did two things. She talked about her son and how great he was, i.e., how great of a mom she was. And then she would go on about how fucked up ghetto parents are, or and she wouldn't say ghetto, obviously. It was like, but it was basically how fucked up working class parents are. So
Because I mean, I would think that as a college professor, I mean, it depends on which school you're going to, but not all of them are paid well. Some of them are just working part time.
oh yeah.
You would see a class too. But then again, then there are people who are full time and have time to spout that kind of nonsense. Shocking.
Yeah, so I mean, so it sounds like I'm just sitting there wanting to sign up for just maybe going over stuff that I already kind of know, or just signing up for more reading and stuff like that. But and oh, I'll tell you something else, something that I was
Mhm.
never good at. Something I was never good at when both I was an activist, and
Mhm.
I even had a radio show, and I was like making zines and shit back in the day. I was never good at research. I got good, I got good. I got really really good at research, and it's a thing to know. It's a thing to learn. And that's something that, and I'll be honest, most colleges, they don't really teach you. I mean, you definitely need to have research in order to start writing your papers and shit, but they don't really go into the actual, like, these are all your sources. Don't just rely on the internet. Don't just rely on on Wikipedia, which is what we teach our 16-year-old all the time. Don't rely on, like, yes, look at stuff, cross reference, like stuff like that. It's like
Mhm.
really important. And yeah, use every resource that that you can afford to use. And I mean, I personally wish I had $1 million so I can at least own a next license in LexisNexis, because that's the shit to have. But if
What
you're
is
like
it?
a LexisNexis, that's like, I'm pretty
What is
sure
it?
it's a database. It's basically pretty
Oh.
much a database that most newspapers, most of the news outlets for, I would say honestly, since the internet was born, was basically using.
Hmm.
And it's like everything from, like, when a certain CEO of GE was born, to how much to how much Apple is making right now in shares, like, or who
Yeah.
a city council, or that they all voted to put sewage slime in drinking water. Like, it has that kinds of stuff in it. And it's mainly all data from, well, really all from other articles and old articles and things like that. But I mean, most people, well, even now, most newspapers say, fuck that. We can't afford LexisNexis anymore. We've got the internet.
Uh-huh.
And so that's pretty much what people do. Now, me, I have a free, almost lifelong I shouldn't say ownership, but membership, I'd say, and being able to access things like JSTOR because of my school that I was
Hmm.
in, because I could still log into it and use it. That's just how they have it set up at the school that I went to. And so, you got all like the old library databases and things where you can download articles and studies and stuff like that. And I'm like, and another good YouTuber I gotta really talk about right now, as a matter of fact, that we're talking about research, and somebody who I feel like she is a resource, but I, like an idiot, I rarely ever use her, but she'd be great to use, is Professor Dr. Winters. Shit, why am I forgetting her first name?
Hmm.
Uh, Professor Winters. I'm so sorry. I'm subscribed to her, and like, it's so weird that I can't.
I'm
I
gonna
can't think
look
of her
her
first
up.
name. She does really good video. She makes really good videos. One of the one video series that she does, a little mini series, is how to social science, and she goes into things like how to research properly, and it's she does like these really great videos. So you got to check it
So
out.
she's
But
teaching people how to critically think and how to source
yeah,
information, which is something
exactly.
that amazingly all through elementary school, all through high school, we're told basically don't cheat on a paper, but
Uh
we
huh.
can't tell if somebody, the source we've gotten is cheating on a paper.
Right.
We
Right.
can't.
Exactly. And amazingly enough, what I've noticed in schools now is they're not really properly teaching people how to research, how to critically think. That's really not also, and that's the thing. Like, on one end, that is happening, but I also know that when I go back, and if you all do, and I do feel like if anyone's listening to this, if you do find yourself in school or back in school or anything like that, and you are in one of those classes that where you are just going to sit there and where you're forced to be basically indoctrinated and you're not really being challenged to learn, I say go ahead and drop the class. Don't waste your money. Drop the fucking class and find a professor who's not like that, or try to figure
Mhm.
out a professor who's not like that. And if you are stuck in a situation where you can't do that, then just get through the class, and really just you're going to have to train yourself. um Give me 1 second. Why don't you talk about, if you can, just for, I just have to do something real quick with my
Mhm.
browser.
Okay.
I have to do something really just quick. But if you can tell us, give us a quick, I shouldn't say quick weekend review, but what has been interesting you? What have you been thinking about politically lately, or what has caught your eye this past week?
Will you be able to hear me while I say this, or will it be like,
Yes, I can. I
okay,
will
okay,
be.
you'll be able to hear me. Okay, well, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I what you were saying basically earlier about how you feel stagnant, um, if I can even say it like that, I feel like the same way. When it comes to social justice, it just seems depressing. And I know that people get burned out and it's not uncommon, but I just don't understand how people continue forth with hope and how people can, I can imagine that during the civil rights movement, people felt this way and really felt like their work wasn't done by the time they died. Of course, I know it'll never be done, but coming to terms with that for me is very difficult. It's not something that I can handle. I just like the idea of things being complete and finished and whole for some reason. And I know that there are people that can see success and get excited about it, but I think I'm one of those people who's like, well, this needs to happen. This all needs to change right now. Let's
Right.
just fix it today. And there are so many obstacles when it comes to change actually occurring. And for somebody like me, it's overwhelming.
Now you were we spoke as we always do,
Mm-hmm.
almost every day really, about things, and you were telling me about, and I really don't want to like expose any kind of
Go
internal
ahead
stuff
and
that you
type it in
may
the chat.
no that you may not want to bring up if it's internal about between women, between feminists, but you brought up
Oh,
some
go
things
ahead.
that you had encountered amongst some radical feminists
Yes.
that were positive and negative, I
Well,
guess, right?
wait, when what?
I said that were either positive or negative, right?
Yes. Oh,
The,
yeah, go right ahead. See, no, of course you can tell me about that. Yeah, it's just hard when you see issues like that in the social justice realm. And then I learned, because I'm not so learned or well read like you, and it seems like everybody who's interested in social justice, there's almost a barrier when it comes to people being super well read, well versed, and knowing so many things that other people don't know. And I think that it's a hindrance. Well, I learned about the quote unquote dangers of progressivism, and it made me think, well, how do you avoid something like that?
right.
And then the same time, um, I understand the need to be progressive, but change is not easy.
No,
It's
change is
just,
not easy, and it's
mm,
not easy for those who think that they're enlightened. There seems to be a real issue. Huh. This okay. Now I'm done with my little background shenanigans. You know what I did? I just put Dr. Christy Winters. That was her first name. I can't believe I forgot. I just put her link in the chat room, but I'm going to add her into the uh, into the low bar when we're done with this. When I can edit it, because I just want people. Like I said, I think she's a great resource, and she's almost someone who I just really need to keep going. And there's so many videos that I put in my watch later list of hers that I just still haven't got around to doing. And I think that if I ever get a situation where I'm almost like this close to clicking on a insectoid channel, that's the time in which I should go ahead and just click on Christy Winter's goddamn channel.
I know what you
And
mean.
just
And see, the thing is, for me, it's difficult to watch what goes on that other, well, this side, because I
in that
tend to
realm.
participate and take action. So I'm the person who will interact on mute and then find out about something and then confront it. I can't just sit and listen to people. I really can't. I can sit and
Hey, I
listen to
see.
your videos, but not when
Oh,
people aren't
thanks.
making sense.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I want to go back to the one thing that you brought up, but I do want to give a shout out to Troll Father. He's in the he's in the chat room. Now I have to say I like his channel. I like his channel just purely for entertainment purposes. If I really don't want to go ahead and get all up into the insectoids, at
Hmm.
least his channel will sort of be like that. Hey, I'm gonna tell you what happened this week.
Well, his channel and then the backup channel, the Hangout sector. And I tend to read the
Oh, he does
title.
that one too?
No, 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 no. I'm saying
Oh,
there's a separate channel.
okay. Yeah, I know there's a separate channel. I've seen that one. I've seen a couple of videos on that
Yeah, so there's two, and what I do is I read the titles, and then
one.
Eminem Slim Shady. I just read the titles, and then I know sort of what's going on because I
Yeah,
just can't sit and listen to these people. I
I
can't.
know. I
I
can't. I
can't.
can't. I'm
It
with
will
you.
push you to suicide. You can if you cannot engage and do some kind of good, there is no point. There's no point.
I got you. Yep. You're right.
There's really not.
You're right. I honestly, I feel like there's times when, if you wind up getting sucked into that realm, you wind up feeling like you got to go and take a shower, and you got to read at least like 100 books or something in order to regain your goddamn brain cells. There's a
Well, yeah,
gentleman
and I'm
named
all for
Ruben.
fun and comedy, and I think it has its place. But this is not it's not what's happening
Hmm,
at all. I mean, it's people feeling good about being so awful.
I know, right?
And
Hey, so this is what I wanted. I wanted to go back on the progressivism thing because see, that's the thing. What you were talking about, you were encountering with some certain individuals and stuff like that. And it doesn't matter if you're going to find those people amongst the feminists, you're going to find those people amongst the Marxist Leninists, you're going to find those people amongst the anarchists, you're going to find those people amongst even our own progressive black folks. Like, you're going to find those people, right? And
mhm.
sometimes some people think that they're so friggin' enlightened that they can't be taught to, that you can't tell them shit, basically. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
like that. And but the thing is that here's the good news. You might, because I've encountered it many times when I was, back in the day. And the only thing I can say about that is in the end of the day is you don't have to let that I don't want to use the word discourage. It's demoralize you. That's the word. You don't have to let that demoralize you, because the good news is that there's still other people just like you, still trying to learn and grab the thing and grab the ropes and trying to learn as they move on.
Mhm.
Because those people seem like they dominate a movement, and it may seem like that they actually are the leaders of a certain movement or organization or what have you. But
Mhm.
the reality is that if it really is that being the case, you can always step away from the motherfuckers and start your own shit. Just do whatever. Like that's what a lot of some friends of mine who were closer to my age at the time when we were all in our 20s, that's what we encountered when we dealt with our respective, leaders. Like when I was in the Black United Front, the Houston chapter anyway,
Mhm.
I realized leaders a douche. Like he is like he this dude is like, vying for power, and I feel like I'm the only one seeing it. And he's so quick to shut everybody else's ideas down, and he was so quick to do, like to do all these things. And then I was right, because in just less than 5 years, he wound up being not only a council member, but he wound up becoming a mayor pro tem. So I'm like, wow, this is crazy.
What? And he
So
was
it's like,
more so he was just power hungry.
yeah, well, you know what it is? It was a mix between two things, and the one thing about it, and I talked about this in my the personal is the political episode a while back. It's a combination of two things. It's about wanting power, yeah, but it's also that feeling of when you're older, you're like, how long can I be organizing protests? Like, how long can I be out in the streets? Like, how long can I be doing this shit? Like, I never went back to school. I never finished school. So there is no option to go into corporate America at this point at 50 something years old.
You're
That's how
50
they.
something?
No, no, no. I'm talking about the
Oh, I
leader.
was gonna say I'm shocked.
No, 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 no. But I'm close. I'm getting there. But no, the dude, the leader that I'm talking about, like, I mean, the thing that goes on with some of the leaders' minds, I'm pretty sure that that's what they're thinking. So there's a mix of selling out, and there's a mix of wanting power, and there's a mix of now wanting certain privileges and certain like class privileges and everything. And then there's that other feeling of, hey, I'm not getting any younger, and I'm not making any real. So that kind of thing happens. It's kind of scary, but it
Well, do
does
you
happen.
think that he was just one of those people who like to hear themselves talk?
He wasn't like that. He wasn't those type. I know what you're talking about, but he didn't fit that bill. I just think he became so demoralized and so cynical that it was more like if you can't beat them, join them type of thing.
Really?
Yeah,
So he changed
yeah.
his views drastically. Well, maybe he was working from the inside. Or
Well,
was
he
he
was
completely
always
anti-structure?
no, he wasn't completely anti-structure. He no, he had been an activist for years. This guy, he had been an activist way longer, probably before I was even born. But what happened was but like I said, by the time, like by the 90s, he was probably already, and I think by now maybe like in his early 50s. So he was I think he was just like kind of done. He was just tired. But what I hated was the fact that at the expense of him going through his own changes, which should have just been his own fucking changes, we wound up doing things that a lot of us really didn't agree with. Like, we had a situation where we were going to set up a talk, right, where we had invited over, man, it was like maybe over 100 people who all had situations with the Houston Police Department. One dude had an actual home invasion by the police. They had no warrant. They only went in there on a hearsay that he was selling drugs. He wasn't selling drugs. He was definitely in the prison, yes, for selling drugs. But he had already stopped. He didn't have anything going on. And they didn't find anything. But while they were there trying to force him to tell them that something that wasn't true, at one point they shoved his head in the toilet. Now, and we had a whole bunch of people with all these kinds of testimonies, right? And what was supposed to happen was the police chief at the time was invited to sit at the panel, and the idea was to have him listen directly to all of these stories. And he even agreed to come, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, on the day of the event, when we had all these people there, and guess what? The police chief wasn't there. I think the mayor was invited. And none of those people were there. So they basically told us to fuck off and we're not coming. Even though the police chief himself at the time, he's no longer the police chief there. Nuccia, I think his last name was.
Wow.
He just simply didn't show up. And he was like the main motherfucker that we wanted him to be there on that panel, listen to these testimonies. Now, the event went on as planned.
Uh-huh.
But when we had the meeting afterwards, and this was my wake up call basically, because when we had the meeting afterwards, our leader, our chairman at the time, the guy I'm talking about, he basically was just bitching at us about every damn thing that we did wrong. And I'm sitting here going, you
Oh
said that,
God.
and I funny, and I said, well, the police chief, I said, you're talking about this was late and we were late doing this and then the other. Where was the police chief that you said was going to be there? Since you had all these meetings with him and you said he was going to come there, and
Do
see,
you
he
think it's possible
immediately
that the leader botched things?
he didn't botch things. I think he knew that the police chief wasn't coming. I think he lied and said to us that the police chief was coming. I think that he knew that basically the police chief sunned his ass and said, I ain't coming to your shit. I'm not gonna hear those stories. I don't give a fuck. And that's
But
basic.
why
And instead of
lie
him
to the
just coming back and
people you're
saying,
leading?
what now?
But why lie to the people you're leading?
Because
I
that's just how it
it's
goes. I mean, now I'm not saying that's something that I think is acceptable. That's certainly something that I would never do. I mean, hell,
your
I would have just come on and
job.
said, you know what, y'all? I had like a whole, I went through 2 weeks straight of meeting with this guy back and forth about will he come to this thing? And ultimately he told me to fuck off. He ain't doing it. So this is what we're going to do.
Wow.
We're going to make sure that the public knows that he didn't show up for this reason. And this was the
Good.
reason why. See, that's what I would have done. He didn't, we didn't even do that. So next thing but hey, like I said, he became mayor pro tem in less than 5 years. This
Was this the
person,
person that was this person African American or black?
yes.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, you can Google him. His name was Judon Boney. And we got along really well. He liked me and all that. Like we were cool and everything. But like I said, I had to have my own wake up call. And he went from like dealing with peace and justice issues to now listening to and actually getting certain things done, like listening to a bunch of housewives wanting to get stripper clubs removed from their neighborhoods. Like and you got to understand his section was not an African American section by the time he became a city councilman. When he first started as a freshman city councilman, his neighborhood, his area was mainly a suburb and mainly a business area. So his big thing was, we're going to push this law about I think it was like a 5-foot rule or something. So you couldn't, if you went to a strip club, the strippers couldn't do the actual lap dances anymore. Like he helped push that. I'm like, wow, you actually got that done, but you couldn't get the goddamn police chief to come to the. I mean, I don't blame him that he couldn't get the police chief to do it,
It's
but what I blame is the fact that
you guys.
his pride was so much so that he didn't want to tell us that that wasn't going to happen, and that in exchange for that, and I mean, a lot of the local grassroots activist leaders around, of his generation, of his group, they all sold out in one way or the other. I'll never forget how one of them, who is the director of a very large and successful community center, and granted, that's a resource that we've seen disappear all over the Black communities throughout the United States. But in,
Yes.
this gentleman had a community center, and next thing you know, he got like this huge grant. Like this huge grant came through. But the more, and it's like everybody knew about it, and he was able to renovate the center. He was actually able to buy another building to annex the center.
Mhm.
He was like, all this money was coming through. They were doing things like they were able to have like these great video classes for their after school program, like all this stuff that definitely, hey, I'm down with. All right, don't get me
Mhm.
wrong. I do not begrudge that. I do not hate on that. I was glad, but here's the problem, though. This man, I'm pretty sure, knows how to write a grant. I'm pretty sure he's been writing grants like that for almost 20 years.
Grant writing is
Past
a full-time job. A
time
full-time,
job. Yeah,
really
you don't have.
is.
I mean, I've never done it, but you don't have to tell me. I know. But here's the thing about it. This guy gets this almost golden egg of a grant, but nobody knows the name of the grantees. Oh, but we do know is one thing. He pulled out of so many different movements and things that he was involved in previously. It's like now all of a sudden he's Mr. Big Time. Like he ain't about trying to be about getting people off death row, and he's not doing all that. Now the one thing I will say to him is that he always let the community center be used by different activist groups and stuff like that after hours. So like by 5 o'clock or whatever, when the major operations of the community center would be closed down, like the after
Mhm.
school would be over with. That's when we all went there for meetings and stuff. But see, there was less and less time for us to be able to book at the community center, if you can see my drift. And so by that time, yes, him running that community center was now a full-time job for him. It wasn't a thing where he was able to balance that out with his activism. Now it was all about that. And they got less and less political, if you will. They became more and more cultural as a community center, less political. And the next thing you know, he really wasn't involved that much in activist things, except he would show up for demos, things like that. So it's obvious that like these three major people. I didn't mention a third, a woman by the name of Ada Edwards, but like again, I don't begrudge her a lot either. But she was a community activist as well, along with the gentleman I was talking about, Junod Boney, and Lloyd Parker. He was the community center director. And look, I don't, but she was even funnier. Her transformation, because she went from being again another grassroots leader, and next thing you know, she too followed that same political route of Dr. Junod Boney. She became a city council woman on the in Houston, and then I think she even ran for mayor, and she became mayor pro tem as well. And then she started doing rice commercials on the radio. But we have blue ribbon rice is sort of like Domino sugar. Well, let's see. You don't live in the north, but if you
Yes,
can
I've seen
imagine
them in
like
the
a large,
store.
huh?
I believe I've seen them in the store. She was
Yeah,
doing commercials for them? Do they really
for
need
blue rice.
promotion? What do they need
Well,
advertising for? Rice
yeah,
is
they don't. They
rice.
didn't. Rice is rice. Thank you. But hey, there she was doing that. So, I mean, that was just some of the things that I remember going up against when I was younger. And my point was that being that, being that, wow, I kind of actually forgot what my point was. I guess it's
You
just
were
like, oh,
telling me about the direction people go in after doing
yes, you're right. So there's that direction. Now, I mean, I'll have to say that
acting.
for me, I just, like I said this in earlier videos, I got burnt out. I got burned out because I tried, when you're young, you just try to do everything. You try to do so much. And I was involved in three different fucking movements at the time. And I was just doing this, doing that, and pulling my own self in different directions that I got so burnt out that burnout effect lasted almost goddamn like 10, 15 years. I mean, I was still feeling it when Occupy started up. My wife was deeply in Occupy. Like she was all over the place. And I was still looking at her like, damn, where are you getting the energy? Because I don't feel it anymore. So, yeah.
Pretty cool.
Wait, you were breaking up. What happened? What'd you say? In New York?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yes.
Okay. That's a once in a lifetime experience. I know that 50 years from now, Occupy is something that people are going to be talking about.
People are still talking about it. Basically, like all movements, when they begin to fade out a little bit, that's when the criticisms come out. That's when the knives come out. Um, but look, there's a lot of good, positive criticism that I've embraced, and a lot of us saw a lot of things as they were happening. There were way too many academics who suddenly wanted to try their hand at street activism, which is always a good thing, instead of just sitting around lecturing and writing papers and shit about real world stuff as it's happening. But the problem is that they were so fucking authoritarian in their approach and condescending that created a rift. Then you had people who really thought that they were reinventing the wheel altogether. But then that's just the hubris of young people, and I don't really begrudge them of that. I was guilty of that back in the day. I would come into meetings and be like, "Well, we need to do this," and people would be like, "We've done that before. That doesn't work." Well, No, well, we need to do this, and I'll repeat exactly the same thing I just fucking said. It's like, this is what young people do. I don't really begrudge that. You can't stop that.
About
That's and hey, to be honest with you, we get so far away from doing certain things a certain way, and forgetting how effective they were when we tried it the first time, that it is a good thing when young people come in and say, hey, let's do this. And even if it was done before, well, let's do it again like it never happened before. Like that's always, I think that that's a good thing. Oh, hey, guys in the chat room. Pure Butterfly, how you doing? It's so funny now. It's like more people are coming now that it's past midnight.
Oh, it's only 9. Different. 3 hours never seems like a lot.
Oh, that's right. You're West Coast. You're breaking up again.
Hello?
I can hear you now, but you were breaking up first. Hmm. Yeah, you're breaking up some more.
Hello?
All right, now I can hear you. Yeah,
Hello?
you were breaking up and then you went completely silent, it sounded like.
Okay, hold on. You know what I'm going to do? I'm
What?
going to my computer one more time because I don't want to break up.
Well, you know what I can do? I can send you the link in if you lose connection, you could just rejoin that way. We'll do that. So anyway, everybody, I want to welcome anybody who's just now joining. As you can all probably tell the difference from my past live chats, I'm actually up later. That's because actually this Thursday, on Thursdays during the summer, they're basically my Fridays. Because I'm off on Fridays. It's a couple of things. It's a holdover from what, and this is a good example of why unions are important. It's one of those holdovers from when unions used to be, and we demanded, and these were, years and years ago before I was even born, probably before my grandparents were even born. Um, it was basically based on the 4-day work week idea, which is a socialist ideal. The the idea is during the
Can you hear
summers.
me? Oh my gosh, you can!
Okay, now I can hear you with an echo
Okay,
though.
yay! You can hear me on my computer.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh my gosh, this is great. Okay, go on. Sorry.
No, I was saying that. So, what I was saying is that. Hold on, just give me 1 second. I just want to.
No,
So,
keep
I don't
talking.
need to. Oh,
I'm gonna get my
no, no,
computer cord.
yeah, you're right. I don't have to do the link. Okay, so what I was saying is that I'm off on the 4-day work. I'm off on Fridays for the summer because it's a holdover from the 4-day work week, which is what unions used to push for, because
Mhm.
that's an old socialist ideal. And also, the other thing is, so it's not. Oh, that's the thing. The 4-day work week. That's one of the things that's in danger in France. That's one of the things currently what the workers are out there striking and protesting about. Now, most people are thinking, well, is this really just about an extra day off? But it's not really about that. The way the 4-day work week works, because it's not just about Monday through Thursday, you actually wind up hiring more people and able to take people out of being unemployed if you had all the industries doing the 4-day work week. Because what happens is, although it decreases the work hours that people are working, the good news is that it actually leaves those extra days open for other people to be able to work and fill up shifts. So it's not perfect in that way, but it definitely increases the workforce rather than kill the workforce and take people out of the workforce. And as Kali Akuno had pointed out in his article, it helps lessen that quote unquote surplus workers, i.e., unemployed people. So that's really the design based on Marxists, what the 4-day work week is supposed to be about. So during the summer, that's what I get. And so I'm off on Fridays. Long story short. But I just wanted to throw that little bit of history in. Force 100 Bull is here. Yay.
Okay, so now that I'm upstairs, I was out on my porch in a rocking chair. Now I'm back upstairs. I wanted to say, I hear so many people complaining about unions, but I think they do quite a bit of good for people.
They do good and bad. Just like everything else, I think under capitalism, there's a certain how shall I say corruption that goes on, like with everything else. So while some unions become very bloated and they become bureaucratized and they have, other unions are still fighting unions. And the thing is, a lot of other unions have a tendency of siding more with the bosses and taking on what's the word I'm looking for, compromises, where they're supposed to be really representing the workers, and they say, well, no, this is a better deal for you guys. This is the better deal. And because they become less like fighting organizations. That's the thing. They've lost their way, if you will. Most unions, I would say most unions.
Well, I
But
can see how with big companies that could happen. You know, I was watching a video where this man was talking about his union and how awful it was, or a former union where he had worked. But with smaller, with maybe with like college campuses and stuff like that, I could see it really being beneficial.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the thing is that, you know, the other thing that I wanted to bring up about that's I think is an issue with unions is that we begin to complain about unions because the bosses want us to. So when you see people like Trump, right? So when you see people like Trump, when you see the Republican Party, when you see even really some elements within the Democratic Party, I mean, when you see them out there ranting and raving and railing against the unions, that basically their talking points are designed to put that in states, especially the red states, where they are quote unquote right to work states, and states like Texas that are like basically, you know, we have the power to fire and hire no matter what. Um, very anti-labor states. They they basically design all of those talking points to where when you live in those kinds of states, you can easily believe those talking points before you'll ever know what it's really like to live in a city and state where unions are in a more powerful position. Now, what I think is happening as of late, I can't speak on France, I can't speak on Europe, but I think it's happening as of late. If do you remember when the state building was taken over, it was against the right to work. It was, I want to say Minnesota, but maybe it was Wisconsin. This is horrible because I should actually know this. But these were very powerful union states at some point. And what I noticed is that they got militant, which is a good thing. They got militant when they were trying to pass the right to work bills in those states, which actually strips them even more stuff from workers and actually even puts the unions on in a way worse position in terms of even bargaining. And you know, and they're getting to the point to where some of these states are even trying to outlaw unions. I mean, there are barely any unions in Texas at this point. But the point that I'm making is a lot of the states are trying to go in that direction. And the thing is that, but I've noticed that there's a lot of what's happening is that when you start to see unions and you start to see them becoming more militant and more active and all that good stuff, it's because I think they're having a change of leadership within those organizations. It's no longer, I mean, it's no longer about these sort of big burly guys that can barely wear a damn jacket over their suits, and it's like not about those guys anymore. But um, but that is what makes a difference, because if you don't have, and I have to say it, younger, militant, I have nothing to lose. This is my union. I've joined it. I've become a shop person, and now I mean I was the shop rep, and I've become more active in it. If you don't have those people, your union will never ever get to that point of being more militant, and they will stay really being sort of like representatives of the bosses. So that's basically what's going on there.
People become complacent.
Yeah, people
I've,
do it. It's kind of falls right back into how easy it is for activist leaders to sell out. You know?
that's just surprising to me that people do sell out. But maybe we shouldn't even sometimes call it sell out. I mean, like with the guy with the gym. I mean, sorry, the community center.
Yeah.
Maybe he just got really, really busy after the
Yeah.
grant grew.
Well, no, well, yeah, definitely. That's how come I really didn't want to go and mention his name at first. There's a lot of things that I do not begrudge him of that, but the popular rumor was that a lot of the commerce, the downtown boys, as we call the good old boys, downtown Houston, these are the guys that wear the 10 gallon boy hats, but they're wearing $800 Italian suits, business suits. These guys, dudes with first name like Bubba, but last name is Tarlington, like those guys. That the rumor was is that they gave him a nice little grant, and that they didn't really have a name to it, and they gave it to him. Now that's just a rumor, so I don't want like anybody thinking that's the truth, because it's not the truth. It's just a rumor. But basically, it was because the real thing was this. And I know that I left out something big. I'm going to go ahead and bring it up, because this is about what happens when people become demoralized, and how people become corrupt, and how people sell out, blah, 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 blah. My point here is this. What happened, you can look it up. There's an area in Houston. It's the first area that African Americans, after they were freed as slaves, had settled in. On one end of this area is called Freedman's Town. Okay, it's
Mhm.
the first black community after slavery that was established. Old homes, row houses, the whole mix. On the other side of that area is a place called Allen Parkway Village. Now, Allen Parkway Village is basically was Section 8 housing. Now, that was built way later in modern times. But my point about Allen Parkway was that you got to look well, you got to look, but you wouldn't know this, but I'm going to tell you now. That area was prime real estate that everybody was looking at, because one, Allen Parkway Village looked over the bayou, a natural bayou. It was near a very scenic looking drive like area. I mean, people had plans. They wanted that area. Okay. So on one end, you got basically, and I'll say this, Allen Parkway Village, they were projects. Now, the projects in the South might look like the projects in the West Coast. They were mainly like mainly 2-story or 3-story, sort of low rambling, and they're part of a larger complex of other buildings, and they're all cookie cutter in terms of design, and color, and all that good shit. But
Mhm.
Allen, like I said, Allen Parkway was Section 8 housing. It was where poor people can afford to live. On the other side of the bayou was Freedman's Town, which actually had very nice homes. A lot of these homes were very old and historic. And this is the same thing what's happening in Harlem. And that's the thing is that they hate, when I say they, You know what I'm talking about? Capitalist ruling class people, and of course, mainly all the white supremacists. They hate to see black people have nice shit. That's how come. If I'm speaking in plain language now, they hate to see black people have nice shit. Okay, and actually keep it, and actually keep it nice. So what do? They
They built
basically
that. Okay. I was going to ask you if that's what happened.
that's what happened
Oh my
because by the time the 70s rolled in, I can't speak on the 70s. I could definitely speak on the 80s because it was the 80s when we first moved to Houston. Um, but I'd say about 5 years after we moved to Houston, so that's 85. So crack, that's when crack hit well, that's when crack hit all the black neighborhoods. All right. But the thing about it is that you knew that they're coming in with landlords not taking care of properties, with black people who actually own properties, but were now surrounded by, uh, crack vials in their front lawn, bullet shells in their front lawn. I mean,
God.
and bullets whizzing through their homes. At this point, it's like, fuck, I don't want to live here. What's the point? And I don't begrudge them of that, right? But then that's the point.
How long
They're going
ago
to
did
move
that
out.
happen?
They well with Allen Parkway, we're talking about the 80s.
Okay. So they
So
built the place. They built the place with the Section 8 and whatnot in the 80s.
no,
Or
I'm sorry.
did people start
Allen,
seeing
let me go back. Allen Parkway was built way longer. I can't off the top of my head tell you when Allen Parkway was built. I think the 70s, back when most projects were being built across Black America, right?
No, I
But
mean, when did people start to move out? When did people
yeah,
start to
well,
abandon?
yes, yes, because that was the intention, right? You lived in projects for a while until you were able to get a job, get on your feet, and get the fuck out.
Mhm.
So, but when the crack epidemic hit in the 80s, that's when people were, and really the economy tanked. That's when people were staying and people were kind of stuck there, and they didn't have other places to move. Now, the people in Allen Parkway, they had a leader. His name was Linwood Johnson. Linwood was basically elected by everybody. Like, they're trying to push us out of this area. We know why they're doing it. So he linked up with a woman, I believe her name was Gladys House. She was the leader representing across the bayou, Freedmanstown. Now, with her, she was a little bit lucky. They were able to keep Freedmanstown from being bought out by the commerce because Freedmanstown, they were able to get a historic status, right?
Okay.
It
Yeah.
didn't save them from gentrification later, but which is the deal now, right? But
Hmm.
but with Allen Parkway, they had more of a militant fight, and they were going to stand for the long haul. They didn't really want to be moved anywhere else. That offer. Well, we can move you to someplace else. They were like, move us where to more Section 8 housing? We could do that on our fucking own. We know it's the principle of this. We know why you want this area. So it's more like they were trying to fight on the principle. Now, basically, Lyndon Johnson had the support of the three leaders I had mentioned earlier. But damned if by the 90s, he no longer had their support. And suddenly they had careers to pursue. And that's exactly around the time when they were able to now bulldoze and do whatever. I mean, I think last time I visited Houston was in 2009 with my family. We drove through that area, and I mean, there was all kinds of memories for me because we were always going to Allen Parkway for something, uh, you know, either political like gathering parties, things like that, or just to be there. Which is kind of retarded, but I mean, I mean, people live there, right? But we like being there, I think, and it was all gone. It's a ghost town. Now, it's strange that the buildings haven't been. I think some of the parts have been demolished, but not the rest of it. But no one's living there. That's for sure. So I don't know, man. Whatever the developers had planned, maybe they fell out. Maybe they didn't want. Either way, though, in a lot of ways, they still want property that they wanted. Um, and meanwhile, Gladys, I don't know about whatever happened to Gladys House. I never looked her up. I should after this show. But I do know that Allen Parkway, like I said, it one of the oldest African American communities, second to the one that I actually grew up in, which is Third Ward, which is still Fifth Ward. I got to go back on the ages, but
Mhm.
Fifth Ward is a little famous. You might have heard of. You might have
Wait,
heard
are you
of.
going to tell me the movie with Viola Davis?
Wait, what
Was it from a movie?
was what from a movie? Fifth Ward.
Yeah, because you're saying it's a little famous, and somebody was just telling me that there was.
Oh, right. Well,
Um,
no, I was about to say, well, Fifth Ward might be famous to some people as that was the birthplace of Rap-A-Lot Records and the Ghetto
oh,
Boys. Yeah,
oh goodness.
maybe, maybe you're too young to remember them, but they were, Mr. Scarface, Willie D, like these, they all came
I
from.
only know of Willie D from today. I didn't. You have to
He's
understand. I
still
didn't.
making records. He's still making records. Yeah.
Well, yeah. From I know he had that song that came out that I sent you, and then I
Mhm.
also know he did a song, a remix of a Beyonce song that I liked, and that's when I started to realize I like this person.
Yeah. Yeah, he's from Houston. He's from Houston. He was part of Rap a Lot. Rap a Lot Records was trying to be the next like the Def Jam of Houston. And listen, to some degree they were successful. You can't take that away from them. I mean, most everybody else, especially around my age group, you could be in Japan and they'll remember the Ghetto Boys. Um, but yeah, that was the name of that was gonna be their MC slash 2 Live Crew type of group, but really that's a bad comparison because Ghetto Boys are unique. Nobody can. They were who they were, man. You know. But
No,
anyway,
I don't remember all of that stuff. People say, "Don't you remember this, that, and the other?" You have to understand. I didn't even really know who Jay Z was. I didn't have cable or I didn't have cable or internet growing up. I grew
well,
up really disconnected, and it's not like people were talking about this stuff in school. You know what
right.
I had? I had a radio. Is what I had, and I did not have it on FM. I had it on AM.
AM.
Yes.
Wow. I don't know. You know what? I'm actually envious of you that you actually grew up that
I
way.
am so out of touch. I am so out of touch. You know, I did get a Destiny's Child CD. I did have that. But after that, I didn't know what Beyonce did. Just really, really not in touch. So when I'm discovering this music, I'm discovering it later in life. I literally just found out who Willie D is, and I like it.
Right. Right.
You know, I had to literally look these things up, and then I find out that they were popular when I was younger, and I'm upset. I'm like, well, gosh, I didn't get to participate in this. Yeah,
Okay. Oh,
but
I haven't looked at the chat room in a while. I'm looking at uh Force 100 said that Allen Parkway is still mostly black. Yes, that's true. There are people still living there. Oh, I didn't know that. Lyons and Benson Street. Oh, okay, good. The Allen Parkway area, pretty much. I'm pretty sure, but I don't know if the Allen Parkway Village. I know that it was all boarded up. Projects. Actual political fight was stemming from. That was all boarded up last time we looked through there. Now, unless they've rejuvenated or somebody bought it and just made it into mixed economy housing, I don't know. But yeah, that was pretty much all and it was I think it was considered was it considered fourth ward or first ward? I forgot. But if you go now, but if Force 100, if you're able to, if you go ahead and Google Freemanstown, that's actually more interesting. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Harlem because I want to go back on that concept about how they hate when black people have nice shit. Because if you look at what I learned from a friend, we have a friend of ours who lives in our neighborhood, and she's a filmmaker. And if I can find Ah, man, you know what? Because I can't think of the doc. If I can think of the documentary name, I will probably have to do a separate episode because it won't do any good to add it to the low bar of this about the next day or the day afterwards because I got to ask my wife again. But we sat and looked at a documentary that goes into really good detail because she had a screening in our neighborhood of how Harlem actually had come to being gentrified the way that it is. That's the area that I currently live. That's where I live. And the thing about what Harlem had to experience was not only just the economic breakdown under the mid to late 70s and then the Reagan years, but of course there was even earlier before the mid 70s there was the heroin uh, the heroin right. So, and then you had landlords who just simply, again, they weren't taking care of buildings, and people who didn't think anything about, well, let me find out if this building is actually on sale with the city. It's something that, um, it's something that I can, it's something that I can, buy. Because some people were able to buy whole buildings back in the day. My wife's oldest childhood friend, his family were able to do that. I think they bought their building for $1 or something crazy like that. They had to redo it and in order to live in it. But that's the New York that was actually that's the thing. That's how Trump even came to power. New York had to be in complete and total decay in order for people to feed off of that. And the only people who feed off of disaster are the ruling class. That's how they do it. And in the case of Harlem, that's exactly what you're seeing right now. It's prosperous for those who are making money. Real estate people, retail stores, and everybody else who stands to make money here, uh, they all profit based on the shit that Harlem had to go through in the early 70s, with buildings being run down, people saying fuck this, I can't deal, I'm leaving. I mean, we had businesses, black people had businesses here. They were running cleaners, they were running restaurants, nice ones. You don't see that at all here anymore. Now some black communities have never had that. I understand that. Now my old neighborhood, my old community back in Houston, third ward, it was sort of like the Harlem, if you will, of Houston. I mean, you had like a lot of professors from Texas State Southern University who lived in the area, professors who also taught at U of H, but they also lived in Third Ward. All these nice big houses along the bayou over there in that area. You've had like you had a black middle class. There used to be black doctors used to live there, even run their practices in some parts of the same neighborhood. Like all that was happening. And yeah, some people say, well, that was during segregation, which in a lot of ways is actually good for black people. Some people felt. Um, but anyway, I'm going off on a thing. The point here is that we had our shit. There was never a situation. People will think all we ever had and all black communities ever were ghettos. That's not true. Almost every black community that you think is that you see as a ghetto now was an actual thriving community, and it wasn't because white people were living there. We actually had our own shit. We had restaurants. We had dentists. We had uh, general physicians. We had all of that stuff, and then all it took was two things: the black middle class either leaving because the neighborhood was getting bad, was getting violent, or simply, yeah, voluntarily leaving because they just wanted to live in the suburbs. They wanted to live with the Joneses, so to speak.
Why?
Well, I mean, that really was. You have to understand. I think, right? I mean, I'm only putting out conjecture at this point. I think a lot of the people, in other words, who would be who would be my parents, right? In other words, the baby
Mhm.
boomers. I think that lived growing up under segregation and growing up under Jim Crow laws, even if you lived in the North, you somewhat, you had more opportunities than the Southern black folks, but still you knew that there was always these walls and these barriers. So I think as soon as the Civil Rights Bill was signed and you had equal opportunity employment bill and all that other good stuff happening, I think people just felt like, well, we should not be locked into anything, not even if it's our own communities. Even if those communities are thriving, we should be able to say, hey, let's go move to the suburbs. We should be able to live in the deluxe apartment in the sky. We should be able to do all those things that everyone else can do. And look, I don't completely begrudge that thinking, but on the other end, especially now that I'm older, you kind of look back and you think of things like heritage, and you think of uh, just having a community that has its own resources. You start to think that maybe that obviously was not a good idea. That we should have fought for. We definitely should have. We most certainly, no, without no question, we should have fought against segregation. Yes, but at the same time, didn't mean that we had to drop everything that was really under our control and leave it. So I can't really add that. Like again, I was just throwing out conjecture. It could be been a part of that. Hey, we should have the pride and the right to do what everybody else does. And I think that there was another part of everybody that said, hey, this shit is our neighborhood is becoming a shithole. Let's get the fuck out if we have the means to do so. Do you remember the miniseries? Does anybody in the chat room remember? Yes, drugs destroy the majority of the black community. First 100 will said. TSU's in third ward. Yes, that's what I was saying first. My neighborhood was third ward. And we had professors that taught at TSU, and they also lived in that community when I was growing up there. Um, he said the black people were very political back then. From what I heard, yes, they were.
Well, when you can live next to somebody that looks like you and talk
Yeah,
about things,
yeah,
that affect both of you, that becomes much easier. I mean, it's not like I can do that. It really isn't.
right, right, right.
So I can see why people would be more political. And now, my other question is this. We're
Yeah,
talking about, I don't want to say the city's names wrong. I tend to miss out on detail. But with City A and City B, which initially started this conversation about gentrification and what happens um, when somebody is set up that way, not somebody, when a town or a city is set up to fail or to take over something next door, didn't they have to vote to say, hey, look, this is going to happen and things like that? Because when I've been to this is a city hall meeting, uh, um, they call it something planning commission something. Well, I've been to one of those and they were opposing some kind of a building to help people who needed some kind of help, and they said no. They said no to it. And I guess I can see how if somebody didn't know about that kind of meeting, they wouldn't go to it. But at the same time, not if they didn't know it, if you didn't live in the city, that it wasn't, I don't even know how to say this properly. There were people from both sides of the city that for this planning commission. Does that make sense? There were people.
yeah,
It wasn't just people in that city going to the meeting.
right.
There were people from the surrounding cities going to the meeting and voicing concerns. And I almost wonder if that had happened, if it could have stopped them from building those Section 8 houses, which they no longer even do it like that anymore. Now they go off of existing houses. They don't put people, I don't know if they still put people in those apartments at all, but from what I understand now, people can just live anywhere on Section 8.
Yeah, that is a rather liberal program that got pushed somewhere in the early 80s, which quite frankly, I'm I don't have a problem with,
Well,
because
you don't want to have a population where there's only poor people living together because for whatever reason poverty does breed crime. Maybe it's
well,
I think maybe it's because the police don't respond as well to
no,
those
they
areas.
don't. Yeah, they don't. They don't want to go to any area where they quote where they feel like they're quote unquote going to get shot. So
Yeah, and crime begets crime.
right.
So I can understand. I never did understand why crime is associated with poverty outside of that. Outside of, drugs being dropped now that I think about it. Well, that's not going to be an opportunity so much for people who are in Section 8 housing. They can't just do that and have that kind of activity going on because people are now in middle class areas living on Section 8.
Yeah. Yeah. Hold on, just going to type something to Force 100. Um, remember? Hold on. Do you guys remember the HBO miniseries The Corner?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody in the chat room?
Oh,
It was
I shouldn't have even said no to that because we just discovered I didn't have cable. Of
well, you
course,
just
I didn't
discovered.
see it. I didn't have TV.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Well, actor Charles Dutton, that was really his show. I mean, his project. But the writers, what's his name? Steve, was it David Simon? David Simon and the other guy from The Wire. They were the ones that produced it. And I think Charles Dutton, he not only wrote it, I think he directed it. There was one part, the part that always gets me. I'm not even gonna lie, about because unlike so many of these macho menses on YouTube, I don't give a shit about being emotional. But the one part that always gets me, is when they talk about the father. Is when they don't talk about him when they show the father's flashback before he became, because we're introduced to him as a junkie at the beginning of the series. And I don't want to give too much of the plot away, but the point here is that this is about not just the father of the series, but how the father in a lot of ways was actually made a symbol community, because they showed in the early 80s he had a job. It was a working class job, it was a labor job. But guess what? He had, he was paying a mortgage. They had one of those nice old, Baltimore looking houses, as you can see some of them, even though if you look at pictures of them now, they're all fucked up. But if you actually look at the architecture, you're like, wow, that would have been a really nice house to live in. They lived in a nice little place, he, his wife, and the son. And they slowly showed him going from that to then losing his job, but then always out there trying to look for a job, always trying to keep his family together. Already, his wife was already, like I think she was already becoming an addict. Matter of fact, people were making fun of him because he wasn't getting high yet. All right.
Oh,
There was, and like I said, I don't want to give up too much, but the point here is that you saw him go from this productive man and thinking nothing's going to happen, nothing's going to go wrong. And then suddenly now we see him how he is in the show. Dirty, out there trying to, steal copper, like all this stuff. And you basically could say this about the black community. I mean, when I saw footage of old Baltimore before 1977, black and white footage, color footage. I mean, the black neighborhood then, it's the neighborhood, the footage that I saw, Could have easily have been, now I'm going even further back in my life to Kansas City, Missouri when I was a boy. Could have been just like the neighborhood I lived in when I was living in Kansas City. I mean, we had black butchers. We had black butchers. We had black, and my stepfather's sister owned the building that we lived in, that we were renting. She was our landlord. We lived above her store. Her store was a regular old corner store, and it was a cleaner's. Okay, black
Wow.
woman, single black woman. On top of that, like, so what I'm saying is there was that, and we're talking, from the 50s, even probably even before then, all the way, and then suddenly 1977 or 1985. It depends on the community when they can actually trace back when they saw their neighborhoods go to shit. And it started with the drugs. Well, first, to me, I don't say it starts with the drugs. To me, it starts with the economy. Because even the father in the corner, he lost his job. That's how it really started. But he lost his job because that's when things went bad for Baltimore as a city.
Hmm.
When the docks were being slowly closed, sections of the docks were slowly being closed up. So, and among other things, among other businesses. But I'm going to suggest to everybody, I want you all to look for Manning Marable's uh, How Black America Was Underdeveloped, or something like that. It's crazy. I've read this book 2 times, but I feel like I need to reread it again because it's been over 20 years since I've read it last. I suggest that we need to go back and read these books, because I can guarantee you we will see the connection from that book, because it was written in the early 80s. It came out in the early 80s, before the crack epidemic. But he mainly even talks about, I think, the heroin epidemic in that book. But we get to see and trace when the economies begin to break down is exactly when the black communities began to break down, and when drugs were the drug dealing, in other words, was the quote unquote choice, but it was a choice in terms of making money, or taking it because you're so depressed because you can't find work. So again, in the chat, the government did a good job at destroying our youth. From what I see, the youth today are nowhere near political, says Force 100. He's right about that. Sad thing I remember is that I knew a man, I didn't know him personally, but I knew a guy that was formerly in the Black Panther Party. And back when America Online first came out, like when I used to have an America Online account, I was typing in something like, black radicals. Like I was trying to look for a chat group, and I couldn't find anything like that at all. So the only closest thing we could find was something like black Democrats. And in there was a man who was like, I'm like 60 years old. I'm 65 years old. He said, I was railing about capitalism the other day, and my daughter literally laughed at me. He's like, he said his youngest daughter. So that means that she was actually younger than me. But he was like, and she literally laughed at me and said, how the hell can you hate money? I didn't even know how to explain to her, because that question alone was coming from such a place of, I cannot relate to anything you're saying right now, because capitalism gives me my cold clothes. Capitalism gives me a Big Mac. Capitalism gives me all these great things. What the fuck are you talking about? You hate money. So that's basically kind of falls into what Force 100 is saying, that the government did such a good job destroying our youth. From what I see, the youth today are nowhere near political. It's crazy.
Well, I think that the youth, to some extent, are, because Black Lives Matter. I would think when I saw the protests and whatnot, there were a lot of young people, college-aged people. But I think the up and coming generation, this Instagram group of people, I really don't know about them.
Yeah.
I
Well,
really don't. And I can understand how that girl feels. I really like to dress up. I love clothing. I absolutely do. I love heels. Like, well, I don't even wear makeup, but I like it.
no,
I know
listen, I'm gonna
exactly how she
begrudge that.
feels.
Yeah.
I won't lie. I can't lie.
Yeah.
Um, but it certainly has had a downside.
Definitely.
I don't think that anybody wants to remove people being able to buy things and whatnot. I don't think that's what people are hoping for. But I
No.
also don't think that anyone wants to live in an environment where basically you exist to buy things.
Well, this is where the creative conversation, I guess, with between radicals and people who you're trying to sell your ideas to comes, because first of all, it's a good thing. I mean, listen, I could even tell you, look, man, I don't want to really have a society where I don't have technology. I don't rely on technology. I don't live by technology, but I love technology.
Mhm.
Just a convenience. It's more than just a thing that I like. I mean, sorry, it's more than just a thing that's about convenience and getting things done more efficiently, but it's also a thing that that I actually like and enjoy, and
Mhm.
I'm a hobbyist. But so no, I'm not looking for us to go right back to hammers. I'm sorry, to beating things with clubs and sitting in the dark. That's not what I'm about. I mean, I know there's people out there who want that again, and they are
Mhm.
welcome to it, because all they got to do is just leave the city and go off grid. And I'm totally cool with those people. Like, they can go do that shit. But I do want technology, and I think that we can live in a human society that is not wasteful, that is not authoritarian, that is not oppressive, and we can still have electricity. We can have electricity without fossil fuels, because we just need to sit and think and look at alternatives. We've got way too many forces out there trying to stop us from doing that, because people like to sell oil to us, like drug dealers. You think drug dealers, if people were looking at alternatives to be able to feel good when they're depressed and not, or trying to find an escape and not have to sell drugs, drug dealers would hate that shit. So I mean, uh, I believe we can live in a society where we can move forward, and yes, still have space for people who want makeup, and still have space for people who want to wear Mickey Mouse hats. I mean, I don't give a shit. I mean, but I think that we can have a society where we're not exploiting each other, killing each other, or destroying our environment if we want to have those things. I do believe we can do those things. But if anybody has anything last a thing to say, I'm really starting to get sleepy and tired now. But I mean, people are more than welcome to.
I wish I could get sleepy at 12 a.m. or p.m.
It's
Sorry.
one where
I
I am
really do.
now.
I wish that I
Yeah,
could live that way. I mean, you must be living a productive life if you're getting sleepy this early.
I am. But you know what? But problem with me, I have not been sleeping well in the last month because of the change. It always
Mhm.
happens to me around this time of year. Um, and in the month of October, I stay up late a lot. No, September, because I know it's going to be the change of season. So I just have my body just has a hard time adjusting. So it's like the summer now, and my body is still in winter, I guess. So I'm just still trying to
Well,
get
and then
used
there are
to it.
people that get depression that's seasonal. Like they literally get depressed during the summer or the winter. So I know that the seasons really affect people. I
Yeah,
know
they
what you're
definitely
talking
do.
about.
Yeah,
I
hey,
do.
I definitely get the winter depression thing, but I've been getting for the last couple of years, I've been getting professional help around that, so it's not
Me
as severe.
too. And now that you mention it, that is exactly one of the things that I emailed you about. I know you didn't respond to this email, but okay. I actually am not against pharmaceuticals. Um, And so I'm one of those people that is like, I can't be depressed forever, right? And so, and not that anybody that's not seeking a psychiatric help um, wants to be depressed forever. But I was
Yeah.
having a conversation with a friend of mine who's a doctor, not a psychiatrist or anything, but we were talking about what's been going on lately in the herbal community. Not, I can't really say just the herbal community, but people that are interested in other cures. They're sick of big pharma. They're sick of the
Yeah.
things that
Yeah. The
occur,
holistic. Yeah.
right? And then to the point where now, though, people don't realize there's all this marketing and whatnot going on behind that because people are making so much money off of people's fear of big pharma. You know, people are literally fear mongering those who do seek help. Not
Right.
not who seek help, those who are interested, who are scared of big pharma. And I'm like, wow, I didn't realize that it was so that there are people that are marketing highly to for natural remedies and things like that. I don't know why I didn't realize it, but I didn't.
I'm not against. I'm definitely against the industry of pharmaceuticals, but I'm not against the actual use of chemistry to help people. Again, it's just that thing where I don't blame the tool; I blame the holder of the tool. Is who I have a problem with.
Yeah.
If we can wrestle the tool away from the indolent man child band baby that wants more and more and more money, and put it in our hands and put the means of that kind of production in our hands, then yeah, because the problem with, I think, I shouldn't say a problem, the the thing about holistic medicine and healing is that, I hate to say it, but it takes too fucking long. It's like you got to do way too much and take way too much in order for the shit to work. Now, the idea is that you're supposed to keep taking it, and let it be part of your life. But how long do you have to do that before you can try to start
Well,
to fight
that's
depression? I
true of
know.
some medicine. Yeah, that's true of because I couldn't see myself. I don't necessarily see a life without antidepressants. I don't really want to.
Right.
I can't imagine. I would be terrified. And it has nothing to do with addiction. I don't really like taking medicine every day. I just would rather not be miserable.
Yeah.
And so, but the thing is with herbalists and natural communities and stuff, my issue is that there's not formal regulation. Okay, so if there were formal regulations and whatnot in place, to you obviously can't go say to somebody, I can heal you of AIDS. You know, we saw what happened with Dr. Sabi. Do you know who that is?
No, I don't.
No, he's the man who's known for the herbalist who's known for being able to cure cancer, AIDS, HIV. And
Huh.
well, he made those claims against against the government, telling him you can't say that if you can't prove it. So he had like a court date, and there were all these people with test results showing up and saying that they didn't have HIV anymore as a result of being treated by him. I think it was for HIV. And in reality, the viral loads, I think, were probably just low, is maybe what happened to those people. I don't necessarily think that those people were completely cured of their illnesses. Now, in terms of, actually, I want to go back on that statement before I move forward. They let him say that and continue forth, but there's no regulation and no structure. The other thing is, these people are selling things at alarmingly high prices. They say that it costs a lot to make these natural medicines and things like that, and people just aren't interested in spending $300 and $400 a month in herbs
Right.
and whatnot. to get better. They can't afford it. People can barely afford to eat healthily.
Yeah.
And we know that the food that we're getting is not necessarily, we've seen the organic movement and whatnot, but we still know that food isn't really giving us the life that it probably used to. Probably not giving us the vitality that it used to. Even the water, the structure of water and whatnot, when it goes through these plants, when I say plants, I mean whatever treatments they give water is not the same on a structural level as the water that's going to come straight from the ground.
Yeah.
But how was I going with this? It was telling me something about, okay, yeah, but people just don't have the money to spend that much on herbs. Some people will spend that much on psychiatric medication too, or regular medicine. It might be a few $100s a month and whatnot, but for whatever they have, I can guarantee you with herbs, it's probably going to cost quite a bit more. I don't think that people can afford it. And on top of that, for it not to be a regulated industry, I think is the other issue. When you don't have to answer to anyone, you end up ripping a lot of people off. So the guy, he's world renowned. There are a lot of people who still reference him and support him. But I know personally somebody who saw him for cancer because they were terrified of what do you call it? They were terrified of doctors and whatnot. They didn't trust, and certainly Western medicine has earned that distrust. They've experimented on people, but when you have such fear, people go in another direction, and it's not a direction that's regulated by anything. The guy, the Dr. Sabi guy who can cure HIV and cancer, and he's allowed, well, he says so and whatnot, and he's allowed to practice here under that guise. My family friend, she died of cancer under his care. She just died. She was doing better. She was on his regimen for years and very, very strict. Very, very strict. She did everything, and it was breast cancer. It spread to the brain under herbal medicine. And this was somebody who people are still supporting, and I wonder how many people died under his care and people don't even know. Because for him, you weren't allowed to sue him if you were treated in the U.S.,
Right.
and you weren't cured and whatnot. I mean, who's going to sue when somebody is, she's not going to sue. She's dead now.
Yeah.
And it's not like the grieving family members want to do that, but he said if you guys come to Honduras and whatnot, you will be healed. I believe Michael Jackson saw him. Celebrities love him. Lisa Left Eye. Is that the one who died from TLC? She was on her way to see him when she died. She was
She's on his way.
Huh?
Yeah, she was on his way. She was on her way to see him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
I
right.
I know she died in that car wreck in Honduras.
Yeah, I believe she was on her way to see this doctor, this herbal doctor, herbalist, and so he's very popular and whatnot, but it's not a regulated industry where they have to answer to anyone in terms of providing studies. It's not like, they're, and the worst part about it is, he didn't ever encourage her to go get a blood test and see if the cancer had spread or anything. And that is my thing with herbal medicine. How can you keep track of what's going on if they were to, provide blood tests or at least encourage you to go to your doctor and keep track of your health? I would feel differently.
Right.
I would really like if they did that. And I do think a lot of people are, not a lot of people, I think that people can choose a dual approach. so that they at least know what's going on with them, because she didn't know that the cancer in her breast turned to a tumor in her head, brain tumor. She had no one way of knowing that. And again, she was seeking herbal help, and herbal help that's very, very popular still. Very popular guy. Like I said, Michael Jackson had seen him, treats celebrities, but still, um, look at what's happening to Charlie Sheen. Didn't he come out and say he was being treated naturally, and he was off of his HIV medicine?
I don't remember that. I do remember just him confessing, that he had it. Uh, but I don't remember that part. If he probably was, you're saying that most likely he was probably a patient of this doctor.
No, well, I could see that if he were being treated naturally right now. I can't imagine who else he'd be going to.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know anybody more famous for that kind of treatment. Unless he's seeing that guy, Kevin Tris, whatever his name is, natural cures they don't want you to know about.
Oh,
Unless he's
right.
him, I wouldn't know who else. But I see you guys are having economic chat inside of the chat, and I know you wanted to go to sleep, and so thank you so much.
No, well, yeah. I mean, no. Listen, the thing about it is that we were getting into an interesting thing about a conversation about what we should have, what should we have, what should we be able to keep in terms of some new society. And I think that I think that you brought up an interesting thing about medicine that I would definitely love for us to talk about as a specific episode, because I mean, just for in and of itself, because I too have no problem with the industry in terms of them better. I think that they basically give a lot of the holistic medicine the sort of bionic boost, if you will,
Mhm.
to give, to help us. And I think that they can help us. It's just that it's just about that goddamn industry that's actually wielding and holding all the power. But I want to thank everybody for coming tonight and listening to me. I really want to thank some of our newcomers as well. I want to thank Blackthorn Romeo, who I don't think has ever come before, and I want to thank uh, I think it was a gentleman by the name of, oh shoot, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting. Oh yeah, it was Ruben, and I want to thank my old people here, Vuk and Force 100 and Pure Butterfly Spirit. I want to thank y'all for coming, but yeah, I'm literally about to fall asleep at this point. But yeah, I'm old. I can't do that like y'all do, like being up all night. But listen, this was great. I didn't even intend to stay on this long. I was just going to get off at 12, but thank you all so much for coming, and I hope that this was a good discussion. Come back again. I'm gonna redo Autonomous Lounge, but it's gonna be live from now on Thursday nights. Okay. So peace to everybody, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
And most of all, thank Curious for helping liven up the show as she always does.
Oh gosh, I feel so out of place. You know so much. Thank you
No,
for
no, no,
educating
no.
me.
No, well, thank you for bringing me viewers, because that's pretty much what happens. You got to tell the truth now. As soon as I put you on, I get people coming here.
It's only
But
because I'm asking you questions. I'm kind of like, I don't know, a cup for water. You know,
no, thank you
you're the
though.
water, I'm the
But
cup. So
but but thank you everybody, and I will see you next Thursday. Peace.